Hello and welcome to another episode of the ENT Youth Services Podcast. ENT Youth Services strives to empower, nurture, and transform opportunity youth to become individuals with essential life skills that are necessary to make a valuable contribution in their communities. Stay connected with ENT via your favorite social media apps and help us get the word out by giving us a 5-star rating. On today's episode, we are excited to have our second parent-focused podcast continuing to explore the Washington DC Youth Curfew. Our parents shed a light on how they are mentoring, supporting, and guiding their children in light of the escalating violence, changing social environments, and increasing responsibilities. Stay connected with ENT via your favorite social media apps and help us get the word out by giving us a 5-star rating. Okay, let's get to today's episode.
As usual, it's me, Kyler, back again. Just ready to bring you guys another great podcast with some great content. And as we always speak about the personal connection that we strive to create with our host, our interviewees, and of course, above all else, the young teens that watch and listen to our podcast and kind of look at us to kind of assist them in steering and navigating this crazy world. So with that being said, our parents are back today. It's great to have you all. Would you like to introduce yourselves again?
Hi, Kyler. This is Jennifer Heaven.
Hi, this is Luisa de la Cruz.
Great, great, great. So again, as more and more people kind of trickle back in, they'll introduce themselves, and we'll try to wrap up the second part within our series. So last time we really got into the meat and potatoes, for lack of a better term, of the new curfew that's been installed in Washington D.C. Again, in light of the recent increased violence, and just overall, just things that our young people have been getting involved in within the city, and we touched on a lot of different points and a lot of different topics, and I would say that the discourse was really well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it definitely went well in our discussion 2 weeks ago. I think we got a lot of information out.
So I'm going back over my sheet of topics and everything, and we covered a ton of different things. But one thing that we kind of circled on that said that we're gonna really tap in with when we kind of regrouped and got back on the podcast is the topic of cell phones, and how we navigate social media within our young people, this increased connectivity that we've just kind of seen over the years, and in the role that ultimately plays in shaping the minds of our young people, and also shaping their activities, engagements, behaviors, so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's dive in. Cell phones, parents, cell phones. What are your views on this new generation's addiction to those handheld entrances, portals to the rest of the world?
So with the cell phones, I think, back in the day when we grew up, there was basically no need for cell phones, I don't think. We didn't have one. So, and we did well without it. We went outside, we played, we were engaged. Our parents still knew where we were majority of the time unless we were outside running around at friend's house or riding on bikes somewhere. But I think this generation, I think cell phones now, it's for me as a parent, it was more of a safety issue, just with the ins and outs of what's going on in the world, and just making sure your kids are safe and knowing where they were at all times. The ability to put the trackers on the phone so you can tell where your kids are at all times, unless you have those who try to turn it off. But otherwise, it was more of a safety issue. But now it seems as though it's a backlash from trying for us trying to be safe with our children, to the point where they're on it all the time. They're texting their friends, they're on video chats, they're on these apps. Half of the apps I don't even think I know how to use or how they navigate. um, but they have a million different types of apps, and then you have I know personally I received text messages from random numbers about logging on to sites, and you have to make sure that they're not tapping into these sites that they shouldn't be. It's a lot, and they're not engaged. They're sitting 5 or 10 people at a table, and they're on their cell phones. They're not even talking to each other. They're not. Well, how was your day? What are you doing? They're not playing outside because they're on their cell phone. So it's like a good thing because we want them to be safe and know where they are and be able to communicate with them with all the aspects of all these negative things going on. But then at the same time, it's they're on it all the time. So we have to set barriers, I think, as parents. And sometimes it can be difficult because we're busy. So their playtime is a cell phone.
I have a funny story. I didn't get a cell phone until I was 24 years old because I could afford it. My father would never bought me a cell phone. Since I'm from Dominican Republic, we did play outside until it was dark. And normally in our countries, there's no electricity a certain time at night and certain time of the day. So we were just using outside until our parents like holler at our names. Come in the house. It's kind of night. It's already too dark. And so for me to understand that, like I see my oldest daughter always on the phone 24/7. I'm like, can you get off that thing? And it's hard for her to get off. But sometimes we need to put our phone. I even put my phone down, and my husband put the phone down. We sit outside in the balcony. We grill. We talk to each other, But it is like Heaven said, they need to be on the phone sometimes because that most of the stuff that's online to me it's kind of negative. I don't even have certain things in my phone because I don't see no point of it. Everything that you see, oh, it's a new thing, this is new thing, you can't do this, you can't do that, you too old, you too that. So it's a lot to the cell phones, and you really have to be careful in looking at your phone, at your kid's phone at all times because you don't know who could be approaching your kid some type of way, or they watching something, do something stupid because somebody else is doing it. So I'm really careful with the phones here.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it kind of opens up, the next step for the next question that I have for you guys is being on that side as parents, and even outside of your own kids, like parental figures to nieces, nephews, whoever it might be, just young people in general. Like, how do you guys feel that there's this quote unquote cell phone addiction, right? And this again kind of like separation from um really kind of tapping into our personal relationships as far as being with a group of friends and you're sitting outside and playing basketball or just running around or just doing whatever with your friends, and everyone just isn't consumed with their cell phones, right? Like how do you guys think that this plays a role within what we're seeing right now with our young people as far as directions that we see them going? We all know and can admit that cell phones and social media has such a strong influence and hold, because I think this generation and those a little bit older than them are the first group of young people to grow up and always have access to a cell phone and social media. So I remember what I think MySpace really came out in 2005 ish, around that time, and the kids that were born in 2005 are like 18 years old now. So, which is absolutely crazy to say when you think about it. But what do you guys think, is the influence on our young people as far as, the things that they're now able to consume at such a rapid pace that, again, that we never had the access to do
I
so?
think for our kids, it forces them to grow up faster than what they need to, or definitely what we had to. We were still allowed to be kids, but with all the information that's bombarding social media, they're learning about things that we may not be ready to even teach them about. But they're learning it, and they're experiencing it in schools, and even my kids in certain classes, what is your downtime when you all aren't doing things in class? Oh, they allow us to be on our cell phones. So it's just, I think the world is just so, okay, cell phone crazy, that this is just an easy out for our kids. But the information that they're getting, it causes depression, it causes anxiety, just some of the things that, they've talked about on the news about how just information or information overload or negative information is affecting the mental capacity of our kids because they're just receiving too much too soon, and they're just every little thing is a issue. Mom, did you read this? Mom, did you see this? And you have to sometimes tell them, okay, well, you need to stay off that particular site, or know that information is not true. And not everything they're going to come to you about. So you don't know what information they're getting, what information they're believing, what things they're doing, what their friends are telling them because they saw something on social media. So it's just, you just have to continue to talk to your kids and let them know what's facts, what's not facts, what they need to believe in, what they don't need to believe in as far as information coming from social media.
What's funny is I work in I work in family practice, but there's a pediatrician there, and every time we see a baby, 1 year old, and they fight. Actually, they take the phones in mom hands, so the mom would directly give them the phone so they can shut up, so they can be
Okay.
quiet. They be like, I'm like, how do your babies only 1 year old know how to manage your phone that well? Like they know how
Uh,
to get in YouTube, you know? So I'm like,
yeah,
this,
that's
and it starts from the house. Honestly, it's like, oh, social media, but you allow your kids to get to that point, and I'm guilty as that because I allowed my child to use the phone too when she was younger, but I didn't know I was doing any harm. But nowadays you realizing and you seeing all the stuff that's going on, all this world going on, everything they're saying, is you like, oh yeah, you wish I told my friends, I wish I wasn't born in this era. I'm scared of this era, to be honest. It's just too much. It's too much.
yeah, and as you
Yeah.
mentioned, it's absolutely crazy to see that again. 1 and 2 year olds. Like I have a 2 year old sister who knows how to operate a cell phone. As good as we do, right? And which is something that, I know when I was that age, I couldn't operate a piece of technology that way. And it kind of, in one side of it, we look at it as like, oh my God, like this is amazing. They're so smart. But then on the back end of it is like, okay, that means that we have to be even more vigilant, when it comes to making sure that we're maintaining a closer gaze over the things that they're consuming, right? Because you go from, again, we're having a conversation about teenagers and what they're being exposed to, and so on and so forth. But then you get to the point of like, well, now our 5 year olds could operate at the same level on these social media sites, on technology sites, and just technology in general as these teenagers can. And it's just only going to get more and more advanced at younger ages, just because of it's just the reality of things now, right? Technology in general is always meant to be a tool to kind of help us move forward, but it's easy to kind of to make something that's meant to be an amazing tool, and turn it into an amazing tool of destruction, or steering in the wrong way. So what are some things that you guys think that can be done, right? Or do you think that is too late? We're behind the eight ball on this, and we have to try to speed things up to at least try to get as close enough to the eight ball that we could really make a difference. What are some things that, or even things that you guys are have installed or have kind of taken up
I
to
think,
to kind
like
of overcome
Louisa
this issue
said,
that we're seeing?
we gave our kids cell phones or the iPads with education. Like that's how I started, educational apps where they could do their ABCs and one, two, threes. And then it progressed into that was just, I guess, lack of better words, it was their best friend. They had their cell phone. They could do whatever they needed to do with it. And I think with certain apps, I think we just need to be mindful of what's out there. And it's hard because there's so many different apps that these young people are aware of that we don't. Things that disappear. They can have conversations, and before you know it, the conversation disappears, and you're just like, well, what happened? It's just like, well, that's how the app works. So nobody can track your conversations or whatever the case may be. But I think we need to be diligent, and we need to learn now. We need to catch up to them versus them catching up to us. We need to catch up to them and find out what these apps are, what they entail, the positive, the negative, and possibly if some of the, I know some apps you can actually block your teens from even downloading apps. I know my kids have their cell phone but it's under my mother's account, and they have to be like, Grandma, can I get this? Can I? And I'm just like, Mom, no, she cannot have that app. So it's those kind of things that we have to implement
Mhm.
before things get even worse than what they are.
Definitely, definitely agree. So I'm trying to, because again, even as I mentioned in the last podcast episode, as much as this is about kind of directing a conversation for young people, this is you know also really good information and really good insight for people who also have kids, right? And even for myself who plans to have kids, and as I just mentioned that this thing is going to be uh, a whole lot further along, by the time that I have children, and really just kind of wanting to make sure that they have grow up in an optimal situation, right, where as many outside influences um are limited as possible. uh but we always can't list the negatives of things, right? So are there any positives that you guys have noticed or have pointed to, or even seeing that your kids have mentioned as it goes towards social media or the usage of these cell phones? One big thing now is, since the pandemic, a lot of schools, these kids have laptops now, and it's definitely kind of, enhanced their learning. But what are some other things that within the arguments where he's saying, "Oh, you're on that phone too much," and then they kind of run off with the list of, "Well, here's why." So what are some things that you guys feel have positively come out of this situation with the cell phones and the increased technology at our disposal?
To be honest, I turn my Wi-Fi off sometimes.
Mhm.
I turn it off, and I don't. It's not that it's negative. It's how you use the information that is given to you.
Mhm.
Because no, it's how you take it. It's how you understand it. To me, it's how you understand it. How you interpret it. Something that's put out there for you.
Mhm.
It's, you either take it, or you either don't take it. But in my house, we turn the Wi-Fi off. Nobody's on the phone. But I don't think there's nothing positive about it. Every time you turn around, Kim Kardashian did something. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just putting an example out there, and somebody want to be like Kim Kardashian. And
Yeah,
it's
I
just,
agree. It's a
like
lot.
I said, it's just
It's
too
too
much.
much all at one time.
Mhm.
And even with the kids, it's like, what are you doing on a cell phone? Well, I'm looking up this assignment. And a lot of, like you said, they've been using Chromebooks and stuff as far as schoolwork is concerned. But they also have to use their cell phones to look up information, to do assignments for their teachers. And I'm just like, why are we implementing our cell phones to use to do assignments? But that's the requirement now. That's the way that they're doing things now in school. So it's hard to say that no, we don't want them to use them, but the world is forcing them to be connected to them at all times, unfortunately, in some aspects.
So I kind of want to segue, but you said something really really important. I think I want to kind of touch on that a bit, and it was essentially looking at the role that our educators play, right? Because if we're just being honest, our kids and young people, and I mean even ourselves when we were coming up, right? School was literally a second home, right? We spend at least 8 hours a day at school. And if you play sports or in any clubs, that kind of jumps to around, about 12 hours a day that you spend at school and around, teachers, coaches, administrators, so on and so forth. Right. So as we kind of look at like the creation of this curfew, right? Different organizations in the city, such as ENT, that are now popping up and working to collaborate with each other and with these young people to kind of again build a better foundation, and more access to opportunities in the quote unquote right way to go about things. So what is the role that you guys think that educators, right, or our school systems specifically play um within kind of addressing a lot of the things that we've been speaking about these past two episodes?
Well, as far as the cell phone use, I know, my son's school, it's kind of free will. I know my girls, they literally have to lock up their cell phones while they're in school because they're not allowed to use them because it's distracting. Um, but I also know that they get the a lot of information that is sent from the school is sent to us via apps, via things you can sign off on, permission slips via app. So schools are using apps to communicate with parents and students. So they're using the technology of this information um, to communicate with us in a faster, easier way. We had permission slips. We had a piece of paper. You had to sign it, take it back to school. But nowadays, there's no paper. There's everything is via technology, which is good in a sense because lack of paper, no clutter, your kids aren't losing stuff. But it's like a catch 22. I don't know how they can't use technology now in order to communicate and do things that they need to do as far as the school, the system, the students, and ourselves as parents.
Well, I definitely agree with Heaven. It's just everything is app. Everything is just computer. You can't sign a paper like you used to. I used to sign my own paper to go to trips, but you
Mhm.
can't sign a paper. So now, so it's just like, yeah, it's like definitely, it's nothing else we can really do. This is the new era. This is the new.
Hi, my name is Diallo Watts, and I am a part of the ENT Youth Partners. I just wanted to insert a short interruption to tell you about our sponsor. Today, our sponsor is you, the listener. Thank you so much for donating to ENT Youth Services on our website. Every dollar goes towards plans to continue our impactful workshops, expand our reach on social media, continue our successful podcast, and so much more. If you would like to sponsor ENT, please email us at contact@entyouth.com. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get back to the episode.
And that kind of is a slight foreshadow because we are going to do an episode and try to get the our teen partners, our youth partners on us, and the parents, and also have some mental health specialists to kind of moderate a conversation on mental health, especially again like in our young people, as you mentioned. When I was in high school, there were a couple of instances where people at schools in the area were killed while we were in high school. Unfortunately, whether it be through violence, car accidents, whatever, so on and so forth. But I do think nowadays it's become, I don't know if it's because social media kind of provides us access to, always see these things, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram. But I could only imagine, what it's like for, like, teenagers nowadays, especially in the inner cities, right? And you want to have the faith that things are being done to kind of help create a better environment for our young people. And I think you really mentioned something key where you said that we have to find the perfect line of making sure that we're showing our children that, yeah, we are here for you. If you need anything, come to us, but also not get to the point where, okay, there's just so much of these bad instances and bad tragedies and awful things happening that we just continue to kind of put on them, right? While we're also trying to battle, the social media thing that we're talking about. We're also trying to battle, them finding out what they want to do with themselves, right? So this is just a very very tough thing to talk about, as far as when we do consider losing, young people in our communities that have these very, very tight relationships with our kids. And oftentimes, right, we never really know the type of relationship, uh, just for instance, as I said on the last episode, my parents work in education, right? And one of the a couple of kids, over the years have been involved in different types of violent acts, whether it be losing a family member that's around the same age as them, being targets of potential violence, and is heartbreaking to see, right? Because you really kind of see the weight of the world on these kids, when especially when we talk about our black and brown children, the weight of the world's always been on our shoulders, right? And then now, they're living in an environment where, for lack of a better term, it feels like they're always under constant attack from every single angle, while also having to still carry that burden of the world on their shoulders. And what areas do you think that we as older people, like what areas do you guys think that we can improve on, that we can work on, so
It's
that we can
just
be better for them?
continued communication. Allowing them a safe space, like you said, to talk about things. I think sometimes kids hold in things because nobody's listening to them, or it's no big deal, or I'm a kid and nobody's going to listen to me, or I'm just not going to say anything, um, because they don't have time to listen. I think we just need to communicate. Like, we all need to put our cell phones down and take time out on a daily basis. What did you do in school today? That's a conversation that I have with my kids most of the time. And it's usually, well, I did this in school, did that. And then sometimes they give me more detailed information, like, well, this girl did such and such, oh, there was a fight. And so just, and you have to dig deeper into, okay, well, what happened? Well, what did you do when they were fighting? Well, do you know why? There was a child at their school that um, clearly had some delayed mental ability, but I don't think they understood that at the time because of the type of behavior she would do. Like, she would bark, or she'd be in people's faces and doing different things. And, she wouldn't stop doing it, Mom. I said, well, you have to understand that she may have some mental disorder, um, or delays, so she may not be able to control herself. So having those conversations so they can have a full understanding of what's going on around them helps. But we as parents, we just have to take the time out to do that, because and dig deeper, because they'll give us superficial answers, and we just have to sometimes dig deeper to find out the root of things.
Well, definitely what happens, and communication is very important. Talk to your kids a lot. I talk to my kids a lot. We pray a lot. We read the Bible. We stay. I try my best as a mother to be on top of them. I am not perfect. I am far from perfect, but I always tell them, if you need a guidance, pray. I believe in God so much. I'm like, pray. He's gonna lead you away. So communication is definitely the key to trying to get your kids somewhere else.
Yeah, so I definitely think that, especially as a continuation of our previous episode, that we really again got a lot deeper, and we talked about all of these different hitting points on again, like the level of connection that we would like to build within our podcast, for our listeners to know that this isn't just numbers and statistics and things that we are throwing out, right? Like, these conversations are based on personal experiences. We want our listeners to understand that, we're there with them, right? We're in the trenches. We're trying to solve this problem, with our feet on the ground, doing the real work to let them know that, we're here with you, right? We are trying to find solutions just as you are. And, as we all said before, that while the curfew is a potential solution, that, sometimes, considering all the things that we've talked about, it could be as if we're putting a band-aid on a bleeding artery. But in the meantime, the hope is that, we can continue to work and operate and fix that artery with a more definitive treatment. Do you guys, have any further remarks
Well,
about
just
things we've
going back
discussed,
to
things
the
that we may not
curfew
have
to juveniles, especially under the age of 13. And I think it makes law enforcement's ability to kind of curtail these issues with young adults, because their hands are tied even more now with this new law, because they're not able to basically prosecute kids under a certain age, and the kids know it, so they're going to continue to do what they want to do because they know they can't be prosecuted. There was something in the news about 11-year old who stole several cars, up to 16 cars. They and he does it all the time. They can't do anything to prosecute him because he's under a certain age. And it's
Oh,
just like,
wow.
well, what are we supposed to do? You want to try and uh, deal with these teens who are causing, issues in the world and being violent, being disrespectful, stealing, whatever the case may be. But as a law enforcement, I can't do anything. And it's just difficult trying to grab hold of a problem when they're tying their hands with all these new laws and regulations when it comes to these our youth who are committing a lot of these crimes. We had two teenagers who stole a car. Two of them stole cars the other morning, and one was killed in an accident because they were driving speeding. So one of a 15-year old. So it's just it's difficult to see these things over and over and over, and then trying to enforce certain things and get them to understand and listen, but they can't do anything, and it's hard.
It's funny that she just talked about that. I met this little 8 year old, and I was doing a physical on her with a provider, and she said she couldn't read. I said, oh. And then the provider stayed her, but she stayed in the room with the provider. I walked out, and she told the provider she liked to steal. And I look at the mom, and I look at the child, and the mother, she's like the word nonchalant, like she just worried about how she looks. She didn't worry about what her child was going through. So the child started crying in the room because she said, "I need more attention." So maybe a lot of kids is going through that or doing certain things because the parents don't give them that enough attention for them to feel like they protect or that my mom wants to talk to me, stuff like that. So that girl, the little girl started crying. We have a social worker in the office, and she started talking to the social worker. But the mom was still like she did not care. So it's just a lot in certain cases, certain situations. Oh, he's doing this. The law can do this, but can we? Everything starts at home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Amen. I definitely agree with the sentiments that both of you expressed, and I think both of your testimonies in this episode, they're kind of takes us on a high, but it's also ends on the podcast high, but it gives a real look at two things of or that are really really impacting the situations, right? Things do start at home, and at the same time it makes the bar kind of hard, because how do you maintain um trying to steer these kids in the right direction, or trying to show them that there are just certain things that are unacceptable, and that's a cautionary tale, because you have two teenagers that stole a car, and one of them ends up dying, right, or over something that, again, like that, they shouldn't have been doing. But that's it's so unfortunate. It's absolutely so unfortunate, and um it's just kind of, you get your loss of words at a certain point, because as mentioned again, you see these things like so often nowadays. And how do you genuinely get a hold of it, when it's a matter of, you have parents that are looking for answers and just kind of keep hitting the wall, law enforcement, and even some kids, have decided to, try to step up and be good role models in their community. So even they're kind of hitting the wall, trying to fix this problem. But, I would like to end it with saying that collectively, I'm optimistic that we'll eventually be able to bust through that wall and get to where we need to get. But with that being said, our next episode, hopefully, we can get some police officers to come have a sit down with us, and kind of grind out this conversation and see where can we help them, but also where can we kind of continue to move forward within our own ranks and our own organization, to kind of really really strike an impact in these communities and these teenage populations. But don't want to give you guys too much. You're gonna have to pop in, listen to this episode, our previous ones, and hopefully you'll tap into the ones we have coming in the future. Because we're gonna continue to try to hit the hard points, and have these hard conversations, right? And talk about the things that are near and dear to our hearts, as we kind of work to save our young people from, again, all the things that they're facing. And thank you both for joining us this evening. My name is Kyler Wilson. Thank you for joining the ENT Youth Services podcast. We hope you were able to gain a lot from our conversations. As we always say, that we want these things to be personal, we want them to be raw, but most of all, we want them to be informative. If you would like to learn any more about this topic, or even potentially tap into this conversation yourself, and give your own personal feedback, or any ideas or topics that you would like for our podcast to speak about, whether it be with our parent partners, our youth partners, or the professionals that we want to bring on this show. You can head over to entyouth.com for additional resources, inquiries, and you could also stay connected with us on our social media channels of Facebook, Instagram, and our new LinkedIn. And again, if you like this podcast episode, please leave a comment, drop a like, follow our Youth Services page on YouTube. We're continuing to grow.
Thank you for joining us for the ENT Youth Services Podcast. We hope you were able to be empowered, nurtured, and transformed by our conversations today. If you want to learn more on this topic, head over to entyouth.com for additional resources and stay connected with us via our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like this podcast, we would appreciate a 5-star rating to help us get these episodes out to the people who need it most.